They say every fairy tale starts with a wedding and ends with happily ever after. But what if the kingdom is a soaring Manhattan penthouse, the groom is a high-profile millionaire, and the bride is left pregnant and humiliated in front of his cunning mistress? This is no bedtime story, but a ruthless tale of betrayal, secrets, and a woman's unexpected triumph. When Anthony D'Amico publicly ridicules his devoted pregnant wife Sylvia as crazy, he believes he's won. Yet by sunrise, Sylvia has changed the game, completely locking down his lavish assets and forcing him to confront a new reality. Buckle up. Anthony D'Amico walked down Park Avenue with the confidence of a man who owned half of Manhattan. At just 34 years old, he had garnered a reputation as a Wall Street Marvel smart suave and always a step ahead of the competition. He was known for doubling, even tripling, high-stakes investments for the hedge fund he led. He wore tailored Armani suits as if they were a second skin, glided through exclusive events at the Plaza Hotel as if they were his private parties, and dined at Michelin-star restaurants like Daniel's or Le Bernardin without ever needing a reservation. His wife Sylvia Montgomery D'Amico was the portrait of high society grace. With her gentle brown eyes and warm smile, she seemed born into the upper echelons of wealth. A talented interior designer, Sylvia had been sought after by celebrities and real estate tycoons. But after she married Anthony, her focus shifted toward creating a tranquil home life for both him and the child they dreamed of having. Sylvia's father, Philip Montgomery, had once been Anthony's mentor, a business partner whose capital helped launch Anthony's hedge fund. Philip's passing 2 years ago had left a tremendous void in Sylvia's life, but she had poured her grief into supporting Anthony. She believed in him unconditionally, trusting that her father's confidence in Anthony was well placed. The millions they oversaw together seemed like a testament to her father's trust. Their marriage shone as a beacon of modern-day aristocracy. Tabloid shots of Anthony helping Sylvia out of their Bentley, or the two of them sitting courtside at Knicks games, were an ongoing fascination for high society watchers. From the outside, it looked like a seamless blend of power, prestige, and genuine affection. Behind closed doors, though, cracks were beginning to form. Sylvia sensed a subtle change in Anthony: missed dinners, hurried phone calls, a certain emptiness in the bed next to hers. But each time she let herself think something might be off, she admonished herself for doubting him. Besides, she was pregnant 2 months along. She had only just told Anthony the news a week ago. He had responded with a seemingly genuine excitement, showering her with a diamond bracelet engraved with the words, "For our future." For that moment, her fears melted away. Yet that same night, she had smelled an unfamiliar perfume, clinging to his collar, a heavy jasmine scent. She convinced herself it was just the lingering fragrance from a charity event, maybe a stray hug from an admirer. Anthony was, after all, the golden boy on everyone's must-invite list. It came with the territory right early that morning, around 5 a.m. Sylvia rolled over in bed, only to find Anthony's side empty. She noticed his suit jacket tie and phone were all gone. He rarely left the house without at least telling her. A shiver of fear gripped her, but she struggled to calm herself. Her father had always told her not to jump to conclusions. "Talk first, believe in him," he used to say. So, Sylvia waited, heart-pounding and stomach-twisting, until Anthony returned just before sunrise with a half-baked excuse about an emergency at the trading desk. Sylvia pretended to buy it, though the seeds of doubt sprouted anew. She decided she had to keep a close eye on him, if only to keep her peace of mind. In her pregnant state, stress could be dangerous, but in the back of her mind, a sense of foreboding already had its icy grip on her heart. Before her father died, he had confided in Sylvia that he'd left her a controlling stake in Anthony's company. Despite Anthony's outward success, the arrangement was designed to ensure Sylvia's financial security. Should anything go wrong, or if Anthony ever acted irresponsibly, she could protect herself and her unborn child. Sylvia never imagined she would need to exercise that power. Later that week, she found herself alone in the penthouse apartment. Anthony had cancelled dinner plans yet again with a vague text, "Work emergency. Sorry, love you." Something in the wording felt cold, distant. Once upon a time, he would have included an inside joke or a heart emoji. Now it was all business all the time. Hoping to distract herself, she walked into his study to tidy up. Books were scattered around, some about macroeconomic trends, others about real estate. She reached to organize a stack of documents when a crisp, cream-colored note caught her eye. In neat handwriting, it read, "Vanessa Choi, the Carlisle Hotel, 7 p.m. Her pulse spiked. Vanessa Choi. The name echoed in her head like a bad omen. She immediately recalled the gossip swirling at a recent charity gala. A stunning socialite from Hong Kong, Vanessa had been spotted on the arms of multiple millionaires, each relationship seemingly more fleeting than the last. She was known for her cunning approach. She latched onto powerful men with mesmerizing charm, only to fade away and reappear with someone more influential. Vanity Fair once ran a profile calling her the Siren of the Upper East Side. Sylvia's heart hammered. Was Anthony meeting Vanessa? But why the Carlisle? That was a place couples often snuck away to for quiet rendezvous. She stared at the note for what felt like an eternity, grappling with the primal urge to tear it into pieces or call Anthony immediately. Eventually, she stuffed the slip of paper back between the documents, not wanting him to suspect she'd seen it. All day, Sylvia wrestled with her suspicions. Could it be innocent? Maybe it was a business meeting. She tried to recall whether Vanessa Choi was involved in any major investment or philanthropic circle Anthony had to network with. Her memory offered no comfort. Later that afternoon, she opened her laptop and did a quick internet search, Vanessa Choi, Hong Kong socialite. Headlines of rumored affairs, questionable businesses, and whirlwind breakups popped up, no philanthropic or finance-based mentions. The pit in her stomach deepened. She needed clarity. She could talk to her best friend, Caroline Jenkins, a lawyer by profession who was fiercely protective of Sylvia. Caroline was sharp, analytical, and had a knack for spotting red flags. Sylvia arranged to meet Caroline for coffee at a discreet corner cafe near Gramercy Park. The two women found a small table by the window, and Sylvia spilled everything from Anthony's late-night absences to the suspicious note and her mounting fears. Caroline listened, expression shifting from concern to anger. "This doesn't look good," she said, stirring her latte with a ferocity that betrayed her calm tone. "If you can get proof. If he's cheating with that woman, we need evidence, especially if it threatens your well-being or the child's." Sylvia pressed her trembling hands together. "I can't believe it's come to this, but you're right. I'm not going to accuse him blindly. Maybe I'm just paranoid. But I need to be sure." Caroline reached into her briefcase, pulling out a business card. "Contact Marcus O'Leary. He's a private investigator I've worked with for corporate intelligence cases. He's discreet, thorough, and won't compromise your identity. If Anthony's hiding something, Marcus will find out." A wave of nausea and fear passed through Sylvia. She wanted to trust her husband. She loved him. But something felt decidedly wrong. With a shaky breath, she slipped the card into her purse. The following evening, Sylvia told Anthony she was meeting Caroline for dinner, which wasn't a complete lie. She did have dinner with Caroline, but the real plan came afterward. She had hired Marcus O'Leary, who had asked for Anthony's schedule and the suspicious note. Marcus did not appear surprised upon hearing Vanessa Choi's name. He said he'd heard rumors about her connections with men in high places. He took the note, nodding gravely. "I'll keep you updated," he promised. By 9 p.m., Sylvia sat in Caroline's car around the corner from the Carlisle Hotel. Caroline offered moral support, telling her to stay put. Marcus had parked further down, ready to follow Anthony if and when he appeared. Time felt slower than ever. The city lights glittered and taxis whizzed by in ceaseless motion, but inside Sylvia's heart, it felt as though the world was standing still, waiting for a brutal truth to reveal itself. Finally, shortly after 9:30 p.m., a glossy black Mercedes pulled up near the Carlisle's private entrance. Anthony stepped out in a navy suit, one Sylvia had gifted him for his birthday. Her heart sank. He checked his phone and walked in, glancing around as though making sure he wasn't followed. Moments later, a slender figure in a red evening gown emerged from a separate car. Even from the distance, Sylvia could recognize the face she'd seen in gossip columns Vanessa Choi. The pair disappeared into the hotel. Time moved in excruciating increments. Sylvia battled a surge of panic. Maybe this is a business meeting. Maybe this is something else entirely. But deep inside, she already knew. By 10:45 p.m., the interior lights in one of the hotel's suites flicked on, painting a silhouette of two people drawing closer. Then the lights dimmed. Caroline placed a comforting hand on Sylvia's back. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Sylvia could only close her eyes against the hot tears welling up. Shortly after midnight, Anthony and Vanessa walked out of the hotel, looking intimately close. Anthony's arm hovered around Vanessa's waist, though not overtly. They spoke quietly, his face bearing a soft, affectionate look Sylvia had once believed was only for her. As Marcus snapped photographs from the shadows, Sylvia bit down on her lip to stifle a sob. In that moment, the illusions shattered. All of the suspicious phone calls, the lonely nights, the perfume on his collar, they coalesced into a harsh new reality. The father of her unborn child was betraying her with a woman notorious for chasing rich men. If heartbreak was a physical ache, it would have felled her then and there. Caroline's anger flared. "I can't believe him, and in your condition, he's deplorable." She glared at the tall figure stepping into the Mercedes with Vanessa. "We'll make sure he doesn't get away with this." Sylvia felt hollowed out. Her world was spinning. Yet amid the heartbreak, a strange clarity took hold of her mind. Betrayal demanded justice, especially with a baby on the way. She thought of her father's controlling shares, of the powers he'd left in her name, the emergency instructions he'd always insisted she keep safe. Maybe, just maybe, she had the means to protect herself and her future child. Later that night, Anthony came home reeking of jasmine. His face showed exhaustion, but the guilt was absent. Sylvia stood in the hallway of their penthouse, arms crossed, doing her best to maintain composure. She wanted to fling accusations, but she knew men like Anthony, a cunning hedge fund manager who excelled at spinning stories. Still, a bitterness she couldn't hold back seeped into her voice. Working late again, he paused, meeting her gaze only briefly. Yes, an unexpected meeting with overseas clients. She nodded, the lie pricking every nerve. "Ah, overseas clients at the Carlisle?" His eyes flashed. Why would you say that? She shrugged, feigning nonchalance. I have friends all over Manhattan, Anthony. Word travels. It wasn't a complete fabrication. News of high-profile dalliances in exclusive hotels often found its way to the rumor mill. But she needed to tread carefully. For a split second, his facade slipped, revealing a flash of nervousness. He caught himself, adjusting his tone. You're being paranoid. You know you shouldn't stress yourself out. You're pregnant, for God's sake. Sylvia's heart burned at the dismissal. I'm fine. My blood pressure's just perfect, though I can't say the same about my peace of mind. He changed tactics, stepping forward as though to embrace her. Look, honey, I'm sorry if I've been distant. Work's been insane lately. She recoiled a step back. How convenient. Anthony sighed, theatrically pinching the bridge of his nose. For heaven's sake, Sylvia, do we really have to do this? You're imagining things. I hate seeing you like this, so emotional, so hysterical. Hysterical. The word cut like a knife. She stiffened. I'm not hysterical. I'm pregnant and I'm worried about our marriage. He scoffed, rolling his eyes. God, you sound like a tabloid. If you're this paranoid now, how will you handle the stress when the baby comes? Maybe you should consider seeing a therapist or something. Sylvia stared at him, a cold realization sinking in. He was gaslighting her, turning her legitimate fears into some imagined lunacy. She swallowed her tears, resolved not to let him see her break. You're right, she said softly, turning away from him. I'll see a therapist after we settle certain matters. The seeds of a plan were already forming in her head. She didn't want a shouting match. She wanted justice, clarity, and leverage. A few days later, at a lavish fundraiser for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Sylvia and Anthony were once again the picture of society's golden couple. Photographers snapped shots of them entering the event side by side. Anthony looked every bit the triumphant financier, while Sylvia managed a serene smile despite the chaos in her heart. Inside the ballroom, guests mingled in designer gowns and tuxedos. Waiters glided among them with champagne flutes. The MC recognized Anthony for his generous donations, prompting applause. Through it all, Sylvia remained poised, but she couldn't shake the tension coiled in her stomach. She felt like she was dancing with a viper, forced to maintain the charade of marital bliss. At the silent auction table, Sylvia chatted briefly with an acquaintance, Mary Ann Fullerton, a respected curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. You look radiant, Mary Ann said. Congratulations on the baby. Must be an exciting time. Sylvia forced a smile. Thank you. Yes, it's quite the journey. She spotted Anthony across the room, standing with a group of men. Then her heart jolted as she noticed Vanessa Choi gliding toward him in a shimmering silver gown. Vanessa draped a hand on Anthony's arm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, smiling intimately. Rage flared in Sylvia's chest, but she kept her composure, turning away before either of them noticed her. She called Caroline on her phone, stepping into a quiet corner. He brought her here. At least she's here on her own, but they're together openly flirting. Caroline's voice crackled with outrage. The nerve of him. Are you okay? I'm fine, Sylvia lied. But I need you to call Marcus O'Leary right now. I want more eyes on them. I need absolute proof, pictures, texts, transactions, everything. Anthony won't be able to gaslight me once I have a mountain of evidence. Caroline assured her she'd get on it. Sylvia ended the call, returning to the center of the ballroom just as Anthony excused himself from the group and approached her. Hey, you okay? He asked, resting a hand on her shoulder. She had never wanted to slap that hand away more, but she schooled her features. A little tired, she said, but fine. Listen, he continued, leaning in as though concerned. Vanessa wants to meet you. She's launching some philanthropic initiative, something about building schools in Southeast Asia. I thought you might want to hear her out." Sylvia's stomach churned. The woman known for chasing millionaires and rumored gold digging was now fronting a philanthropic cause. It felt surreal, but she nodded politely. Of course. Anthony led her across the room to Vanessa. Up close, Vanessa was breathtaking, long, flowing black hair cascading over bare shoulders, skin flawless under the chandelier lights. She extended a graceful hand. "Sylvia, I've heard so much about you. Anthony speaks very highly of your design work." Sylvia forced a polite smile. "That's kind of you to say. A pleasure to meet you as well." Vanessa's eyes flickered with an expression Sylvia recognized all too well, pity mingled with condescension. She recognized that look from the tabloids, Vanessa enjoying her stolen triumph. Did she pity Sylvia for her blindness? Or was this a mind game? Anthony mentioned, "You're expecting," Vanessa said, with a practiced note of warmth. "Congratulations, children are a blessing." Sylvia clenched her teeth behind a taut smile. "They are indeed. We're very happy." Over Vanessa's shoulder, Sylvia noticed a flash the photographer for the New York Socialite Weekly snapping away. She managed to smile serenely into the camera, though inside she felt hollow. In that photo, the three of them would appear like old friends. A twisted love triangle, hidden in plain sight, soon to be plastered on social media for the world to misinterpret. Anthony guided Vanessa away toward the silent auction, leaving Sylvia there, feeling the cold vacuum of betrayal. She realized how brazen he was, how comfortable he'd grown in his deception, and she decided that for her child's sake, she wouldn't stand for it. 2 weeks passed, during which Sylvia played the role of the supportive wife while secretly gathering every piece of information she could. Marcus O'Leary proved to be worth every penny. He discovered a series of bank transfers from Anthony's personal account to an account linked to Vanessa in Hong Kong. The funds were significant, each labeled as consulting fees, but no legitimate consulting existed. Marcus also recovered text messages that were downright incriminating Anthony, promising lavish gifts and exotic vacations, Vanessa coaxing him to ditch Sylvia. More damningly, Marcus uncovered that Vanessa was in contact with a scandal-ridden developer in Macau, rumored to be laundering money through shell companies. If Anthony was facilitating any part of that, it could spell disaster, not just for him, but for the entire hedge fund. A swirl of controversies threatened everything he'd built. As Sylvia pored over the evidence, her heartbreak found an outlet in her determination to protect herself and her unborn child. She also confided in Caroline and in an old friend of her father's, Jacob Freeman, a senior partner at the venerable Morgan and Friedman law firm. Jacob knew all about Philip Montgomery's controlling shares and insisted that Sylvia utilize the power she'd been given. "Your father saw the potential for missteps," he said solemnly. "Don't let Anthony's indiscretions ruin you, your child, or your father's legacy." Sylvia was torn. She still loved Anthony in a way. She hated his betrayal, but she had never stopped caring for the man she married. Yet the man who called her crazy was someone else entirely, someone manipulative and cold, who seemed unworthy of her devotion. That sense of betrayal fueled her resolve. She carefully collaborated with Caroline, Marcus, and Jacob to craft a plan. They would watch, wait, and strike at the right moment. The turning point came on a night Sylvia would never forget. It happened at the annual D'Amico Foundation Gala, an event that Anthony's mother, Teresa D'Amico, had long championed. This was the biggest fundraiser of the year, held in the glittering ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, replete with black ties, crystal chandeliers, and a who's who of Manhattan society. Anthony was set to give a keynote speech about philanthropic goals, and the press would be there in droves. Sylvia arrived with Anthony feeling more like a prop than a partner. Yet she wore a stunning emerald gown that hugged her growing baby bump, determined to remind the world and herself that she was no fragile victim. In the midst of mingling with donors, a hush fell over the room. Vanessa Choi made a grand entrance in a daring black dress, accompanied by a real estate magnate. It hardly mattered who her escort was. Her eyes were set on Anthony. Sylvia noticed the subtle nod Anthony gave her, a brief but clear acknowledgement. Sylvia decided not to hide. She walked over to Anthony as he stood with a group of well-heeled acquaintances. "You never told me Vanessa would be here," she said lightly. He froze a little, then forced a casual shrug. "It's a free country. She's allowed to attend fundraisers, especially if she's invited by someone else." Sylvia's skin prickled at his dismissive tone, but before she could respond, Vanessa approached wearing a radiant smile. In front of the entire circle, she placed a hand on Anthony's shoulder, leaning in to whisper something in his ear. The group fell silent, an awkward tension slicing through the air. With an audacity that Sylvia still found shocking, Anthony turned to her. Sylvia stopped glaring. "You're acting crazy." Those words sliced through her composure. Nearby, a reporter's camera shutter clicked. A hush. Anthony's blatant disrespect hung in the air for everyone to see. Sylvia's cheeks burned, but she refused to storm off or cause a scene. Instead, she squared her shoulders, offering a chilly smile. "I'll leave you two to it then," she said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She walked away, eyes stinging, but refused to cry in public. Guests parted like a wave, some looking at her with pity, others with blatant curiosity. She marched straight to the ladies' room, locked herself in a stall, and tried to breathe. Her phone buzzed a text from Caroline. "Stay calm. Tonight is the night. We've got everything in place." Yes, tonight was the night. She inhaled deeply, wiping away a single tear. She would not be humiliated further. The crescendo of the evening came an hour later, after Anthony's keynote speech. Sylvia watched from a table as he bragged about the foundation's achievements, painting himself as a paragon of virtue and success. Applause thundered when he finished. The moment he stepped off stage, Vanessa discreetly congratulated him, then left through a side door. Anthony beamed, receiving compliments from donors and colleagues. Yet all the while, his eyes darted around, perhaps searching for Sylvia to see if she was still crazy. Sylvia met him near the stage, ignoring the flutter of her nerves. "We need to talk," she said, voice low. Anthony tried to wave her off. "Not now, Sylvia. Let's not do this here." She gripped his arm, her nails digging into the expensive fabric of his tux. "We'll do it here and now. You called me crazy in front of your mistress. You made me look like a fool. I'm pregnant with your child, and you're openly humiliating me. That's not just an insult, it's a declaration of war." He glanced around, trying to maintain a veneer of composure. "Don't be ridiculous. Let's discuss this at home." Sylvia's anger flared, but she forced herself to smile for the onlookers. "Fine, I'll let you finish your evening. But tomorrow, you won't be able to ignore me anymore." With that, she swept away, leaving him looking unsettled. When they returned home in near silence, Sylvia went straight to the guest room, locking the door. She refused to engage in any more arguments. She had made arrangements to stay with Caroline that night, but she waited until she heard Anthony's muffled cursing behind the master bedroom door. He was probably calling Vanessa. Clutching her phone, she slipped out of the penthouse, her overnight bag in hand. Caroline's car waited at the curb. The moment she settled into the passenger seat, Caroline squeezed her hand. "You did the right thing. Just wait until morning." Sylvia nodded, exhaling a breath she felt she'd been holding in for months. "Tomorrow," she echoed. "Tomorrow, everything changes." Morning arrived with a crisp sunshine that belied the storm about to unfold. Anthony woke in an empty penthouse, still seething from the night before. He tried calling Sylvia, but got no response. Annoyed, he fired off a text, "We need to talk. I don't appreciate your theatrics." Then he headed to the shower, deciding to focus on his upcoming business day. He had a video conference with a major Asian investor at 9 a.m. in the office. By 8:30, he hopped into the Bentley, scanning the news on his phone. An alert from Morgan Stanley, his personal banking app, popped up. Transaction declined. Strange. He tried again, but the same message appeared. His brow furrowed. He checked another account. Same problem. A flicker of concern. The driver navigated the Manhattan traffic, and Anthony tried transferring some funds on the go. "Your transaction cannot be processed," the app read. Panic spiked. He dialed his banker at Morgan Stanley. The line rang, and then an automated voice told him the line was disconnected. Once at the office, he stormed up to his private floor, ignoring greetings from staff. Within minutes, he was on the phone with another banker. "What the hell is going on with my accounts?" he demanded. The banker's voice was carefully neutral. "I'm sorry, Mr. D'Amico, but as of this morning, your personal accounts, as well as certain corporate accounts, have been frozen under an executive order from the controlling shareholder, Ms. Sylvia Montgomery D'Amico. She submitted legal documentation asserting her authority over the funds." Anthony's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. She can't just freeze my accounts. I run this company." The banker paused, choosing words carefully. "Sir, it appears that Ms. Montgomery D'Amico holds controlling shares and thus has the legal right to take certain financial actions if she deems them necessary for the protection of the company's interests." "Interests," Anthony barked, voice echoing through the glass walls of his corner office. "She's doing this for personal reasons." Yet the banker simply replied, "I suggest you speak with Ms. Montgomery D'Amico directly or consult your lawyers." Anthony slammed the phone down, breathing heavily. This had to be a nightmare. He checked the corporate accounts. Sure enough, a major portion was under scrutiny, restricted from any movement beyond essential operational costs, payroll overhead. He couldn't even access his personal liquidity. Sylvia had locked him out of his fortune. He immediately dialed Sylvia's number, straight to voicemail. Next, he tried her mother, who was traveling in Europe, with no answer. He tried Caroline Jenkins' number, though he knew she'd never pick up. This felt like a mutiny, like the floor had crumbled beneath him. A sense of desperation pushed him to do something he never thought he'd do. He called Vanessa. She picked up on the first ring, sounding groggy. "Tony, it's 7 in the morning," she whined. "It's almost 9, he snapped. "Look, I need you to do something for me. There's an emergency with my accounts. Can you cover that deposit you needed for the real estate project? Just for a little while." Silence, then a cautious response. "Wait, your accounts are frozen. Does Sylvia know about the money you've been sending me?" He closed his eyes. "No, I mean maybe. Listen, I'll fix this. I just need..." Vanessa cut him off, panic evident in her voice. "Tony, I can't get caught in your marital drama. I have my own priorities. This is bad timing. Anthony felt a wave of dread. Vanessa, once so eager to cling to him, was backing off the moment his finances were in trouble. He tried to calm her, but the line went dead. She had hung up. Swallowing hard, he looked out at the panoramic view of Manhattan, once his playground, now feeling like a fortress closing in on him. He was a man who prided himself on control, yet in one swift move, Sylvia had outmaneuvered him completely. By midday, Anthony had finally cornered Sylvia into a meeting at the towering offices of Morgan and Friedman. He stormed into the conference room, visibly rattled, tie-loosened eyes bloodshot, and pride bleeding through every movement. Sylvia was already there, seated calmly with her legal shield, Caroline Jenkins, Jacob Freeman, and two other attorneys. Her black maternity dress was elegant, yet simple, a stark contrast to the tempest brewing across the table. The second Anthony entered, he slammed his hand down on the polished oak surface. "What the hell is this, Sylvia? You've frozen my accounts. My company's accounts. Are you out of your mind?" Jacob raised a hand in a calming gesture. "Mr. D'Amico, let's maintain professionalism. This is a legal discussion." "No, this is insanity," Anthony barked, ignoring him. His eyes were locked on Sylvia. "You went behind my back. You humiliated me in front of my staff and locked me out of everything I built. I'm your husband, for God's sake." Sylvia didn't flinch. Her voice was steady, almost cold. "You lost the right to call yourself my husband when you decided to lie, cheat, and call me crazy in front of a ballroom full of people." His mouth tightened. "This is retaliation. Spite. You're doing this because of your hormones or paranoia, or whatever emotional tailspin you're in." Caroline's tone cut like glass. "Call her crazy one more time and we'll file an emotional abuse claim alongside the financial misconduct." "You think your reputation is damaged now?" Anthony scoffed. "What misconduct? You've got nothing but assumptions." Sylvia reached into a leather binder and slid a folder across the table. "This says otherwise." He flipped it open. Inside, high-resolution photos of him and Vanessa at the Carlisle transaction records showing regular payments to her overseas account and messages pulled from encrypted apps Marcus O'Leary's handiwork. "I miss you already," Anthony had texted Vanessa. "I'll wire it tonight. Just delete this." Anthony's face paled. You hired someone to spy on me." "I hired someone to protect my child," Sylvia said quietly, resting a hand on her belly. "And my father's legacy. You left me no choice." His jaw clenched. "You had no right." "I had every right," she snapped back, finally allowing her anger to show. "My father left me controlling interest in your company. He knew what kind of man you could become. And now you've proven him right." Jacob leaned in. "Legally, she holds the power to restrict spending if the financial security of the fund is at risk. Your dealings with Ms. Choi and her connection to criminal enterprises abroad are more than enough to warrant action." Anthony's defiance flickered. "Vanessa has nothing to do with business wrong." Caroline cut in. "She's tied to a developer under investigation in Macau. We've cross-checked the accounts. You funneled company money to her disguised as consulting payments. That's fraud." He stood abruptly pacing. "This is outrageous. I won't be painted as a villain just because I made a few personal mistakes." Sylvia rose, calm but firm. "You weren't painted a villain. You chose that role when you thought I wouldn't fight back." He turned to her desperation, replacing bravado. "Syl, please, this can't be permanent. We can fix it. I'll stop seeing Vanessa. I'll come home. Let's just reset." Her lips parted, but not in affection. "Reset." She stepped closer, her voice sharper now. "You think you can reset a betrayal, that our marriage is a spreadsheet you can balance with apologies?" "I'm sorry," he said louder, as if volume could rewrite the past. "I messed up. But this freezing my life, this is war." Sylvia nodded slowly. "Good, because I came prepared." She turned to Jacob. "Begin the formal proceedings for legal separation." Anthony's eyes widened. "You're leaving me?" I'm protecting myself. And our child, she replied. You'll have access to a monthly allowance enough to live, but not enough to waste. The rest will be locked, pending a full audit. If you cooperate and clean up your mess, we won't press charges. He stared at her stunned. This is blackmail. No, she said. This is consequence. Silence fell across the room. Anthony, once so sure of his dominance, now looked like a man realizing he'd bet everything and lost. I'll fight this, he growled, though the fire in his voice had dulled. Sylvia didn't flinch. You're welcome to try. Just know I'm not scared of you anymore. And with that, she gathered her papers, nodded politely to the attorneys, and walked out, leaving the man who once held her heart, now frozen in place, just like the accounts he could no longer touch. The city didn't stop, just because Anthony D'Amico's world had crumbled. Yellow cabs still honked through Park Avenue. Stock tickers still scrolled across Times Square. But for Anthony, time had slowed to a humiliating crawl. He checked into the Four Seasons that afternoon with a duffel bag and a temper. The concierge gave him a polite smile, unaware, or perhaps deliberately ignoring the tension radiating off him like static. Anthony had always walked through those lobby doors as a man of power. Now he walked in, carrying the weight of disgrace. Inside the suite, he slumped onto the edge of the bed, surrounded by too much luxury and too little control. He stared at his phone, dozens of unread messages from board members, investors, and associates. No one was asking how he felt. They were asking what happened. Why were the accounts frozen? Why hadn't he responded to the audit request? What did the papers mean about internal restructuring? He had no answers, just a bitter taste in his mouth and Sylvia's cold final words echoing in his head. I'm not scared of you anymore. The next morning, his name was trending, though not the way he was used to. A piece in the New York Business Chronicle hinted at a leadership shakeup at D'Amico Capital. An anonymous source described financial discrepancies and internal investigations. The comments section swirled with speculation. Some called it a smear campaign. Others wondered if Vanessa Choi was involved. Anthony flung the phone across the room. It landed on the thick carpet with a thud. He wasn't just losing money. He was losing narrative. Meanwhile, Sylvia had moved in with her mother at the Upper East Side townhouse. The baby's room was already being painted in soft greens and creams. Sylvia didn't care about the gender, yet what mattered was safety, peace, and a fresh start. The townhouse was quieter than the penthouse. No whispered phone calls at 2 a.m., no faint trace of jasmine perfume on silk collars. Just her mother, humming softly in the kitchen, the rhythmic tapping of a decorator's brush upstairs, and the gentle weight of her growing belly reminding her what mattered most. Each day, she met with Caroline and Jacob to refine her legal strategy. The decision to freeze Anthony's accounts had triggered a wave of boardroom drama. At first, some investors questioned her authority, but Jacob quickly silenced them with documentation from Philip Montgomery's trust. The late founder had granted his daughter not just voting rights, but a clause to intervene if company stability was threatened by executive behavior. Your father was smart, Jacob said during one of their sessions. He foresaw that charm doesn't equal character. Sylvia nodded slowly. He believed in Anthony, but he also prepared for Anthony's failure. Caroline leaned forward. We're prepared too. Vanessa's paper trail is damning. The foreign transfers, the hotel receipts, it all reads like a romance novel gone criminal. If Anthony had just cheated, it would have been one thing. But dragging the company into it, that's where he broke the final line. Despite everything, Sylvia still found herself grieving. Not just the betrayal, but the man she once loved, the life she thought she had, and the future she'd imagined. There were nights when her heart ached in waves. She would curl on the bed with her hand over her stomach and whisper apologies to the unborn child. "I'm sorry your father couldn't be better," she murmured one night, "but I promise I will be." One afternoon, her phone rang. Teresa D'Amico. Sylvia hesitated. The woman had always been kind, if distant. Polished, elegant, and old-school Italian, Teresa believed in family image above all. Sylvia considered letting it go to voicemail, but then answered with a weary, "Hello, Sylvia dear." Teresa's voice came soft and trembling. "I heard. I'm devastated." Sylvia remained silent. "I won't defend him," Teresa said quickly, "but I need you to know he wasn't raised to be this man. I taught him better. He was supposed to protect his family, not destroy it." Sylvia swallowed a lump in her throat. "I know. I loved him, Teresa. I really did. And he loved you in his way," Teresa replied. "But I fear that power, wealth, it spoiled him, made him forget himself." Sylvia inhaled shakily. "I need to do what's right for the baby. That's all that matters now. I respect that, and I want you to know whatever happens, I'm here. If you need help, support, anything at all. This family has failed you enough. I won't let it happen again." It was the first real comfort Sylvia had felt in days. But Anthony wasn't done yet. In the following week, his lawyers filed a motion to lift the freeze. They claimed Sylvia had acted emotionally, that the audit was unwarranted, and that the allegations of misconduct were domestic in nature and not relevant to corporate governance. Jacob crushed it. The evidence was airtight. Marcus O'Leary had done his job flawlessly, tracking the transactions, screenshots of flirtatious messages about funneling cash discreetly, and even a recorded phone call where Vanessa hinted at laundering opportunities through Macau real estate. That recording was the dagger. The court upheld Sylvia's financial controls. Anthony's motion was dismissed. Word spread fast. Investors began requesting private meetings, not with Anthony but with Sylvia. Some even offered to endorse her leadership officially, should she want to take a more active role. It was a strange shift in power. The woman once known as the designer wife had become the center of the empire her father built. Sylvia didn't want to run a hedge fund, but she did want to protect what was hers. At one such meeting, a young investor named Ethan Park leaned across the conference table and said, "Mrs. D'Amico, I'd be proud to back any venture you lead. The way you handled this, it's admirable. Honestly, it's legendary." She smiled, humbled. "Thank you, but I'm not here to be a legend. I'm here to protect my child's future." Still, the press wouldn't leave it alone. Paparazzi waited outside her mother's townhouse. Tabloids ran headlines like "D'Amico Dynasty, Shaken by Mistress Meltdown," and "From Power Couple to Cold War." Even Forbes ran a piece titled "When the Wife Owns the Company." Anthony, meanwhile, was unraveling. His attempts to contact Vanessa were ignored. She'd ghosted him completely. Her Instagram, once filled with champagne flutes and infinity pools, suddenly went private. Rumor had it she'd left for Saint-Tropez with a Swiss banker. He tried to meet Sylvia one evening uninvited outside the townhouse. She stepped out with Caroline and stopped short. Anthony looked gaunt. His Armani suit hung looser, his eyes hollow. "Sylvia, please," he said. "Just 5 minutes." She stared at him for a long moment. Then 5 minutes. They stepped aside into the garden courtyard. He looked around awkwardly, then back at her. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "Not just for what I did, but for who I became. I don't recognize that man anymore." Sylvia held his gaze. "Neither do I." He took a breath. I want to be in the baby's life. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, I'm not shutting you out. But you'll have to earn that trust back, Anthony. Not with money, with actions. He nodded. Fair. And with that, she turned and walked away, not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. For the first time in months, Sylvia felt clarity. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't crazy. She was a woman reborn from betrayal, carrying both a child and her father's legacy with fierce, unwavering strength. Months had passed since Sylvia Montgomery D'Amico turned the financial tables on her husband, and though the media frenzy had slowed, its ripples still disturbed the surface of their lives. Anthony remained under tight financial restrictions. His public image had dimmed his credibility among investors, damaged by the quiet but persistent rumors that followed him like shadows in the boardroom. For Sylvia, the storm had begun to pass. She awoke now to the sounds of birdsong outside her mother's townhouse, rather than the hollow silence of the penthouse. Her days followed a gentle rhythm. Prenatal appointments calls with her legal team, consultations on small, interior design projects, and quiet walks through Central Park. The chaos that once consumed her life had been replaced by a cautious calm. But it wasn't peace, not yet. Some nights, Sylvia would stare at the ceiling, one hand resting on her belly, wondering how things might have been. Could she have done something differently? Could Anthony have changed if she hadn't caught him? Was he ever really the man she thought she married? Those thoughts didn't haunt her anymore, but they lingered, ghosts of trust, lost, and love shattered. Her phone buzzed one morning while she sipped her tea in the sunlit breakfast nook. It was a message from Jacob Freeman. Board meeting scheduled. Investors want your input. Several are requesting your official appointment as interim advisor. Let's talk. Sylvia stared at the screen. For years, she'd been a silent partner, decorating offices, hosting galas, smiling beside Anthony. But now they wanted her voice, her strategy, her leadership. She typed back, I'll come in this afternoon. Later that day, she arrived at D'Amico Capital's sleek Midtown headquarters, not as the CEO's wife, but as a representative of the controlling stake. The receptionist, once coldly formal, now greeted her with deference. Welcome back, Mrs. Montgomery D'Amico. The boardroom was filled with familiar faces, older men and women who had once looked past her at events. Now they leaned in, took notes when she spoke, and asked direct questions about risk mitigation and ethical oversight. One investor, Mr. Liu, a longtime fund contributor from Singapore, raised a key point. The company needs stability. Your presence represents transparency. Would you consider a more permanent role? Sylvia hesitated. My priority is my child, she said, voice firm but gracious. However, I am willing to step in during this transitional phase, as long as corporate ethics remain non-negotiable. Applause followed. Not thunderous, but respectful. It felt surreal. She had come so far from the trembling woman who had once doubted her instincts. Outside the boardroom, Jacob caught up to her. You're a natural. Your father would be proud. She smiled faintly. I hope so. The following week, Sylvia received a carefully worded message from Anthony's attorney requesting a supervised visitation plan for when the baby arrived. Attached was a character statement from Anthony himself, an acknowledgement of his missteps, and a promise to seek therapy. Sylvia stared at it for a long time. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted accountability. Her father had always said, power is responsibility, first privilege, second. Now, that lesson resonated more than ever. She forwarded the message to Caroline. Draft a visitation framework. He can be part of the child's life, but on my terms. As her belly grew, so did her resolve. She returned to working with select clients, discreetly choosing projects that inspired her rather than those that fed social media narratives. Celebrities still reached out, but she often referred them elsewhere. She preferred now to help non-profit organizations design shelters and family centers. One such project was the Women's Shelter in Harlem. Sylvia met weekly with the founder, a fierce woman named Regina, who had escaped an abusive relationship and rebuilt her life from the ground up. People think strength is loud, Regina told her once, walking through the half-finished structure. But real strength is quiet. It's when you refuse to break even when no one's watching. Sylvia smiled. That's exactly what I needed to hear. A few weeks later, Sylvia hosted a quiet lunch with her mother, Caroline, and Teresa D'Amico. It was an unusual gathering, past and present, colliding in her mother's rose garden. Teresa arrived dressed in mourning grey, her once coiffed hair slightly undone. She looked older, more tired. "Sylvia," she said gently, "I've come to ask, not for forgiveness, but for inclusion. I know I don't deserve to see the baby after what my son did. But I hope, maybe, you'll let me be part of your lives." Sylvia studied her for a long moment. "You didn't betray me, Teresa, but silence is complicity. Still, I believe in redemption, and the baby deserves a grandmother who knows right from wrong." Teresa's eyes welled. "Thank you." The baby was born on a stormy Tuesday in early spring. A girl. 8 pounds 2 ounces, with Sylvia's almond-shaped eyes and a shock of dark curls. Sylvia named her Aurelia Hope Montgomery D'Amico after her paternal grandmother, and because in Sylvia's words, hope is what carried me through. Anthony wasn't in the delivery room, but he was notified the moment Aurelia was born. He came to the hospital the next day with flowers and an expression of pure awe. He held his daughter in silence for nearly 10 minutes, tears running unchecked down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She is," Sylvia replied quietly. "And she deserves nothing less than honesty. If you want to be in her life, Anthony, then let your actions speak, not just to me, but to her." He nodded slowly. "I will." Weeks later, as she cradled Aurelia on the townhouse balcony, Sylvia thought of everything that had happened. The deceit, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the growth. She was no longer just a designer, a wife, or a socialite. She was a mother, a protector, a woman who had reclaimed her voice. Down below, Manhattan pulsed with its usual chaos, but in her arms, Sylvia held peace. Her new chapter had begun, not because someone handed it to her, but because she had taken the pen and rewritten the ending herself. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled not out of performance or composure, but because she had finally found her freedom. And there it is, a fairy tale dismantled by betrayal, redeemed by a pregnant wife's unwavering resolve. Anthony's reckless choices and blatant disrespect set this whole story ablaze, yet Sylvia refused to be scorched by the flames. Instead, she rose stronger, safeguarding not only her dignity, but her child's future and her late father's legacy. In the end, the glitz of high society bows to the raw power of truth strategy and self-respect. If you found this story gripping and satisfying, please give this video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas and cautionary tales. Your support helps us bring you more stories of heartbreak, redemption, and the triumph of spirit. Stay tuned, and remember, sometimes the greatest power lies in knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. Thank you for watching.